Today we are going to chat about backcountry sleep systems, from tents to sleeping bags to sleeping pads and everything in between. I'm going to go through what I use throughout the entire year, and hopefully at the end of that, you're going to have a good idea of what might work for you and your hunts. What's going on, guys? I'm Josh Kirchner. Welcome to the Dialed In Hunter YouTube channel, and thank you for tuning in to another video. So today we're going to talk about backcountry sleep systems. I'm gonna break down all the stuff that I use throughout the year. This is a topic that I get a ton of questions about tent, like what tent am I using, what sleeping bag, sleeping pad. So I figured I'd just lump it all in one video and just break it down for you here. First things first, let's chat about shelters. For me, when I think about a shelter on a backpack hunt, the purpose of a shelter to me is to, one, get out of the weather, and then two, obviously that's where I'm going to lay my head and I'm going to sleep that night. I'm not really looking at a shelter as a place that I'm gonna hang out in, like you know, you're gonna sit there and play cards with your buddies or something like that. That's not really how I look at a shelter for backpack hunting. Those are out there, and if you're with a group of people and you have, you know, like say like a big teepee shelter or something like that, that's awesome, and you can absolutely do that. But this video, what I'm trying to focus on is what I would use by myself as a backpack hunter, or just on a backpack hunt where maybe a friend's with me, but we're not sharing a shelter. So I flip-flop between a 2-person and a 1-person tent, okay? I'd probably say my main shelter is the Archery Rincon 2-person. Show it to you. I'm not gonna break down all the specs and stuff like that. I did a review on this, a separate video. Go check that out. I'll try to remember to link it down in the description, but this is the Rincon all packed up. This is a modular system, super cool shelter. You can run it floorless to save weight, or you can run it with an insert, which is how I normally run it. Being from Arizona, lots of creepy crawlies and stuff crawling around, and I just feel like I sleep better with the insert. So all of that is in here right now. Stakes, tent, and insert is all rolled up in here right now. So this is the Rincon 2-person tent. I am using this tent probably, 70%, 60% of the year. It's a fantastic blend between livability and being ultralight. So I have been stuck out there for 8 days in rain and snow, and having a little bit more space on the inside to kind of lay gear out is really very much appreciated when you get into situations where you're you know, retreating from the weather more times than not. So the inside of the shelter, you can fit, so it's a 2-person tent. I usually run it with 1 person though, and how much room that gives me is I can have one side for sleeping, and then the other side I can have for my backpack, extra clothing, you know, my bow, whatever. I keep everything on the inside of the tent with me. I don't feel crammed in there or anything like that. It's a really comfortable shelter. Setup is pretty easy with this. Go check out that video, the review I did on the Rincon 2P, and you'll see the setup process. But basically, you know, you stake it out, you have a center pole, which is right here. Archery makes this carbon center pole. You don't have to use this. You can use a trekking pole to set it up if you want to save even more weight. And I've done that in the past too, but more times than not, I just bring the center pole with me so I can have 2 trekking poles with me while I'm actually hunting. Should I get something down on the ground, I like having the extra stability. So the other shelter that I run quite a bit is the Archery Oahe 1-person tent. Okay, so again, it's a modular system. I did a review on this one too. Go check it out for all the juicy specs and everything like that. But same exact thing, like you have the shelter here and the insert right here. You can run it with just the shelter if you'd like to in floorless mode to save weight, or you can run it with the insert. That's how I normally do it. This is a 1-person shelter, but okay, See, like most one-person shelters from what I've seen are very coffin-like, and they don't offer a lot of room on the inside of them. That is not the case with this one. I really, really enjoy this tent because I can lay in there sleeping, and I can have room on the right side of me and the left side of me for extra gear. You know, maybe I have some clothing, or you know, my boots or something like that, or you know, maybe I bring a book with me or something. There's room there, and I don't feel like the walls are coming in on me when I'm laying in the shelter, which is super, super nice. Setup is pretty easy. Go check out that video that I did to see how that all works, but you stake it out. And then this one, you can do either or with this. I usually run this with a trekking pole. Whenever I'm running this shelter, I'm really trying to save as much weight as possible. Which means I usually leave that carbon center pole at home, and I bring the trekking pole and set it up with the trekking pole. The times that I will not bring this is if I know that weather is gonna be really, really wet. And I'm not saying the tent's not gonna leak. That's not gonna happen. I've never had it leak, okay? But I've had it out in snow and stuff, okay? So like I've never had an issue with it. But the thing that kind of sucks when you're out there in really wet weather with a more minimalist type of shelter is that you're gonna be totally wet, okay? Like getting in and out of the shelter, which means that you don't have like a whole lot of space in there to try to keep things on the inside of the tent from getting wet from you being wet. Does that make sense? So I've just found it's easier to, you know, if I know it's going to be really wet weather, I'll bring the two-person with me just so I can have a little more room in there to lay out wet clothing and whatnot. So other than that though, that's really the only downside to me about the one-person. It is a fantastic one-person tent. Like hands down, I'm not just saying this, like best one-person tent I've ever used, and I love this thing. So those are my two shelters, Oahe 1P and Rincon 2P. And as far as downsides with the Rincon 2P, really the only thing I can think about, because it's my like favorite shelter, is it's a little bigger and a little heavier than the one-person. That's like that's all I got for you guys. I'm sorry, but that's that. That Rincon 2P is my favorite tent right now. Okay, sleeping pads. Let's talk about sleeping pads a little bit. So when I first started backpack hunting, I had that old school roll up Thermarest foam pad that's giant. And that thing works, but it's definitely not comfortable. So I would just advise just skip that and just get an inflating sleeping pad. On that note, one of the things that people bring up to me when I bring up an inflating sleeping pad is, oh, why don't you just bring like a pool toy with you, right? Like one of the things you lay on in the pool to provide comfort. That would provide comfort, but those aren't insulated at all, which brings me to the whole point of a sleeping pad. A sleeping pad is not just for comfort, it is mainly for insulation, okay? The ground can be really cold, even in early fall. You know, the ground can get really cold, and you laying on that cold ground all night will absolutely make you cold. I don't care how warm your sleeping bag is. When you lay down on a sleeping bag, you're compressing all of that insulation on the bottom of the sleeping bag. So you're not getting any warmth from the bottom part of that bag. Which is where the sleeping pad comes in. So sleeping pads, nowadays, there's not like one standard rating for them. It used to be like the standard was R value, which basically tells you the insulating value of the sleeping pad. But nowadays it seems like companies are kind of coming up with their own ratings and stuff like that. So just whatever it is, pay attention to that. If it is R value, I think a good rule of thumb, like middle of the road R value to go with, is like a 3.5 to 5 R value. I think that could get you through most situations. I've used quite a few sleeping pads. One I used forever was a Thermarest NeoAir X-Lite, super ultralight pad. I think it's like 12 ounces or something. I usually had good luck with that. Every now and then I'd get one that was prone to leaking. And the other thing about those is they're very, very noisy. Very noisy, like laughable noisy. You will be giggling because it sounds like you're laying on a bag of potato chips. But it did the job. Yeah, it's super light and it kept me warm. So NeoAir X-Lite from Thermarest, that's a good sleeping pad for backpack hunting. The sleeping pad I'm using currently is the Nemo Tensor Alpine. Really, really love this pad. It was recommended to me by multiple people. Again, I did a dedicated review on this, so I'm not gonna dive super into the specs and everything on this pad, so go check that out. I lay it out, show you how noisy it is or isn't, and just give you my thoughts, and you get all the specs and everything for the pad. This is a really, really, really warm pad, which is, I think, my only downside of this sleeping pad, and a good testament to how much the insulation has an effect on you sleeping. Okay, so there have been nights, particularly like in the springtime or early fall, where I'm laying on this and I will sweat. Okay, like this thing is super insulated. I think they say it's rated to like -20 or something like that. But I just heard such good reviews on it that I pulled the trigger on it, and I'm happy about my decision. But if there's a downside, that's it for this one. You can literally feel the heat radiating up back into you when you lay on that pad, which is really, really nice when it's cool out. But when it's any type of warm, you're definitely going to want something that is a little less insulation. The ways I've combated that is I usually use a quilt in the earlier season. So with a quilt, early season, a lot of times I'm just like throwing a leg out. I'm not totally enclosed in the quilt, and it seems to work out just fine. There's a few different kinds of sleeping pads on the market. You have that old school one that I mentioned. You have the inflating sleeping pads, and then you have the self-inflating. Personally, I think the inflatable ones are the way to go. Yes, carry a patch kit with you. Put a ground cloth down underneath where you're going to be sleeping. That will save the life of your pad. If there's any sticks or anything down there that poke through your tent, it's not going to poke through your pad. At least it's not as likely to poke through your pad. So yeah, you got to have a patch kit with you and stuff like that. But honestly, like I don't think I've ever had to patch a sleeping pad in the hills before. I've had to patch one at home, but never like when I'm on an actual hunt. Keep in mind, I'm usually pretty careful about where I'm putting my sleeping pad though, so I don't just throw it wherever. I'm definitely like clearing out areas where I know I'm going to be sleeping to lessen the chances of putting a hole in my pad. There's also the self-inflating pads. I haven't used them personally, but I have friends that have, and the reviews are kind of mixed on it. Like, yeah, like it's comfortable when you sleep on it, but it seems like the longevity isn't there, and they're also bigger and bulkier. So for backpack hunting, you know, like trying to get things as ultralight and compact as possible. So which is why I believe the inflatable pads are the way to go. As far as sleeping bags and quilts go, I usually use a quilt up until like, I don't know, like October, November-ish, and then I'll transition to a sleeping bag. I don't do that because a quilt can't handle the cold. It's just because the more cold weather insulation I have is a sleeping bag. I'll probably eventually get a quilt that is rated to like 0 degrees or something and be super happy. Before I show you what I'm using though, I just want to cover a couple things about this insulation. So sleeping bags and quilts, there's a temperature rating on them. Not all temperature ratings are created equal. Okay, so in general, a lot of the temperature ratings that you're seeing on sleeping bags and quilts is a you're not gonna die temp rating. Okay, so generally, if a sleeping bag is rated to 20 degrees, it's probably gonna be more comfortable at 30 degrees. Okay, just a general rule of thumb there. There's also different, like between men and women, those are rated differently, okay? So keep that in mind. Women run a little colder than guys do, okay? So their sleeping bags are rated differently. There are companies out there, they're usually like more high-end companies that are building some sleeping bags and quilts that are much more accurate on their rating, but you're definitely going to pay for it, okay? So I mean, there's bags out there you might drop $800, $900 on, okay? So just keep that in mind. I think you do get what you pay for. I don't think you have to break the bank, if I'm being completely honest, on a bag, but I think going a middle of the road route on price is going to be the best thing to do with that. The size of the bag or quilt is another thing that matters. A bag or quilt that is too big for you, you are going to be more likely to get cold in, okay? Because there's too much real estate on the inside of that bag. It's more space to warm up, okay? To contrast that, if you have one that's too small, then you're going to actually be compressing the insulation of the bag, which is just going to compromise your warmth, okay? You really want something that is fit for you. And you know, a lot of these companies, if you just reach out to them and ask them, hey, look, this is how tall I am, this is my body type, what do you recommend in terms of size of a sleeping bag or quilt to get? And they will absolutely work with you. But I just wanted to point this out because it is not something to be overlooked. You definitely want something that is fit to you. All right, let me grab my quilt. All right, here's my quilt. Enlightened Equipment, 20-degree Revelation. I've had this thing, I don't know how many years, okay? It's been a long time and it's still kicking. Super lightweight, man. Like, that's one of the big ups for quilts is that thing is 19 ounces. Awesome weight, compresses down really small, and the whole logic behind a quilt is that there's no bottom to a quilt. So remember what I was talking about with the sleeping pads? The sleeping pad is your insulation. So the thinking is like, okay, well, if the sleeping pad is our main insulation from the ground, why do we have a bottom to a sleeping bag? Why is that there? So with the quilt, you basically save weight of the bottom of what would be a sleeping bag. Instead of that, the quilt attaches to your sleeping pad with straps and buckles. Now, it is essential that you learn how to properly attach the quilt to the sleeping pad. If you don't do that, you're gonna have issues with draft, and you might have a couple rough nights out there. But once you get it figured out, you shouldn't have any issues at all. Okay, so that's the quilt I'm running. I love it. Very ultralight, like I said. I think the downside of it for me is that there's no hood there. Okay, so on a traditional mummy style sleeping bag, I don't use a hood to wear on my head while I'm sleeping. What I do use it for though is I put my pillow in the hood, and it helps keep my pillow nice and secure, and it doesn't fall off my pad while I'm sleeping at night. So that's the downside for me of running a quilt. The later in the season it gets, I start to reach for a sleeping bag. It's from Feathered Friends. It's pretty giant. I don't have it in a sack or anything like that. So this is it. Yeah, there we go. Love this sleeping bag. It is the I believe it's the Lark UL10 from Feathered Friends. Super high quality bag, man. 950 fill, and wicked warm. It's right around that 2 pound range. It might be a little less, might be a couple ounces more, but packs down good because it's down. And I've had just really good luck with it, man. Very comfortable sleeping bag. There's a couple more things I want to cover about sleeping bags and quilts. One of them being is packing them. You see that I don't have the bag in a stuff sack or anything like that. So when you're storing your sleeping bags and your quilts, you don't want to keep them compressed for a really long time. It'll compromise the insulation value of it. So you want to store them loose. I usually hang mine up in a closet, or like the quilt, I have that just in a very loose bag, which is what it came in. But do not store it in a compression sack or anything like that. You're gonna decrease the value of that insulation. There are a few ways to get more out of your sleeping bag, or even less for that matter. So let's talk about the quilt first, because that has the higher temp rating, 20 degrees, okay? Now, before I had a sleeping bag that went down to a lower temperature, what I would do is I would run that quilt, but I would add in a liner when it got cold. Hold on, I'll show you. Okay, so this right here is a Sea to Summit liner that you can put in a sleeping bag or quilt. It's basically just another layer, thin layer of insulation, and they have these rated to different temp ratings. Like this one is called Reactor Extreme. Okay, so I think this one adds like another 10 to 12 degrees or something like that. I might be wrong on my numbers there, but you get the point of what I'm saying. Is you can add insulation value to your current setup to help stretch that setup further into the season. Before I had this, I would just add clothing simply. I would you know, maybe I'd sleep in puffy pants, or sleep in my long johns, something like that, just to help increase the insulation on the inside of my quilt or bag. So, but awesome investment if you're looking to like make things more versatile. Getting something like a liner is a big key to that. Okay, so covered all that. Gonna go through a couple miscellaneous items. These are more luxury items in my opinion, but I just really like them, so I'm gonna show them to you anyway. So first is the pillow. I used to not be a pillow guy. This is a Sea to Summit Aeros pillow. It's inflatable. I have done I'm gonna sleep on my backpack as a pillow, or I'm gonna put my puffy jacket in its pocket and I'm gonna use that as a pillow. I've done all of that. It works, yes, but listen, this is like 2 ounces or something like that. It's well worth it, and you're gonna sleep way better. So I really like this thing, Sea to Summit Aeros pillow. So that's something that's definitely coming with me. And then another thing is just a light. And this is a little lantern that I have for the inside of the tent. It's made by Princeton Tech. It's called their Helix Li. So it packs down just like this here. And then it's got little legs that come out. And there's hooks on here, okay? So you can hang this from, you know, a cord on the inside of your tent or whatever. And then this part comes up. Bingo, all right? And got a little on-off switch here. Several different modes. Go this way, it turns red. Do it twice. A little bit different brightness. So just really cool. I love this thing. It helps light up the inside of the shelter. Plus, you know, yeah, little tiny bit extra weight, tiny more space in the backpack, but it also helps save battery for my headlamp. So when I get in the tent, I usually turn off my headlamp and I turn this on. So and then when I'm ready to go, just packs down like that. Bingo, it's ready to rock. So that's gonna do it. That is the sleep system, my backcountry sleep system. I hope that was helpful for you to, maybe you're planning your first backpack hunt this year. Super stoked for you if you're doing that. You got a heck of a time ahead of you. Lots of adventure, it's very exciting. But the whole gear side of things, particularly the sleep system, shelters, just like where you're gonna lay your head at night, can get a little muddied. There's a lot of options out there, so I figured I would just do a video, show you everything that I'm using. All of this stuff is tried and true. It's been through the ringer. I didn't just go buy it at the store and then just put it in front of the camera for you. All of this stuff is my actual gear, and I believe in all of it. So if you like the video, please hit thumbs up. If you like the channel, please hit subscribe. If you think I missed anything, or if you've got something better, okay, a better piece of gear that I need to know about, drop it down below. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.